Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Thursday, June 24th. So, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. This video is for education purposes only. If the video is a little bit blurry, just hang in there. Maybe restart the video in a little bit. YouTube does take a little while to render their high definition video. So we can go over a couple of themes of the day in terms of in terms of what we saw with the price action. But once again, like this week has been very strong. Big week all around. Growth names were definitely in focus this week. Just a reminder, tomorrow we have the Russell rebalance. So I always get a couple questions about this, the Russell rebalance or rebalances in general. Basically, you could, I talked about this in last week's videos with the S&P, right? Unless you're on a portfolio desk at a U.S. bank and you're analyzing the numbers, right? You're crunching all the numbers, the adds, the deletes that are happening in the Russell indices. You really are not going to have too much edge for that. Right? And you know what the funding trade is, right? Sometimes they decide to kick out more names, or sometimes they decide to add more names. And what happens there's a funding trade. Like everything has to equal, in terms of the index rebalance. So sometimes they decide, sometimes it's not one for one, meaning they add, 50 names and take out 50 names, right? Sometimes they actually add in 15 names and they delete 50 names. So that could be that could be unequal, right, in terms of the adds and deletes, and that creates a funding trade, meaning you have to sell or buy the rest of the basket, right? We saw that last week with the S&P, right? There was huge selling that happened in the S&P rebalance last week because of the funding side of the trade. So does that mean that we get a huge amount of volatility tomorrow? No, it doesn't, because I'm not crunching the numbers, and I'm not on a I used to do this back in the day. I used to work on a Delta One trading desk, and I used to do a little bit of portfolio trading for a little while. So I know what it entails, and you really have to sit down with someone, who's at a bank, who knows all those numbers, and who has a master sheet. There's one of these people, or at least one of them, at every portfolio desk at an institutional trading bank. At an institutional trading firm, who basically just crunches the numbers of the index rebalance and then goes over with their portfolio trading desk, how to position for that, which is done earlier in the week, right? And then what happens is this rebalance will be tied to tomorrow's close. Okay, so that's the story with that. And keep in mind, when you hear Russell rebalance, as I've said this a couple times in these end of day videos, so I'm kind of repeating myself, but I still seem to get questions on it. It's not just the small cap index. So for example, if you read my end of day note. If you read my beginning of day note on ETF fund flows, right? I still tweet this stuff out, right? So you could see, for example, IWF, large cap growth, IWP, IWN, IWD. Now, dealers are collapsing their positions ahead so that they don't have to worry about doing the rebalance. That's a longer explanation than I can do in this that I want to do in this video. But you could see. So this was the same thing. If you go back, and if you want to spend time, go back on my feed, and you can look at the numbers that you saw the last week in terms of the S&P rebalance and the NASDAQ rebalance, right? So there's a lot of weight behind, there's a lot of assets that are tracking these indices. And again, not just the small caps, right? They are the index manager behind all of these types of ETFs: IWD, IWN, IWP, IWF, right? These are funds that are held huge by a lot of RIAs, right? When it's an easy way, and it has become very popular in the last 15 years for registered investment advisors, RIAs, to do an asset allocation model with just ETFs, right? And not even use stocks. So that's why there's so much assets, or that's one of the reasons why there's so much assets tracking these these ETFs, as well as the indices, right? So pension managers will also track the indices themselves. But you could see, for example, like if you want to see this particular growth ETF, right? And again, this is one of those that will get rebalanced. So you can see there's $74 billion that's tracking that ETF, right? IWM, which is the one that everybody knows about, right, or the most popular one. There's actually just $69 billion, so it's a little bit less than their growth ETF. So kind of interesting. So anyway, so what's the so what with this? Well, it was the same thing as last week, right? Kind of get out of the way a little bit. If you could make some money, as I say this all the time, there will be some volatility in single names because of this, right? So you're going to see, like all of a sudden, like a name will be selling off, and then all of a sudden you'll see a couple green bars, right? And vice versa. So the main thing is just to kind of like, if that's not your thing to day trade into those types of moves, then kind of just get out of the way a little bit, right? Especially around the close tomorrow. There will be some people on Twitter tomorrow that'll be like, hey, what happened? What was all this volume that happened in this name? You're going to see big volume in just about every name again. And the Russell only does this rebalance once a year. That's in June. Right, so that's what we got going on. So that took me six minutes to explain something that that people are going to have no idea with. But I try to give people a heads up, like I did last week. I said the same thing, and we had big volatility, which again doesn't always happen. Just because there's a rebalance doesn't mean that you're always going to get big volatility, but you could. Right, and that's why I say just maybe you want to get out of the way. I know some people don't like to hear that, but that's kind of the story. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the indices for a second. Here was the index performance for the day. Oh, whoops, let me do this first. Very strong, right? Even though, I saw some people on Twitter talking about, hey, the S&P is not really moving. Well, that's what happens sometimes when it gaps up. Remember, over time, right? You could Google this if you don't believe me. I don't talk about this all the time anymore because we just haven't had this lately. But over time, the majority of the money is made in the overnight market just by sitting, right? The overnight market, for example, if you buy in the close, sell on the open, over time, you will make a ton more money by doing it the opposite way, buying the open and selling the close. And I know if you're new to that concept, I always get people kind of question me on this one, but Google it. There's been a ton of studies that say, buying the close, selling the open is a much better trade over the last 30 years. The performance percentages are huge in favor of buying the close and selling the open. But that's overall, buying and holding over time, long term is where you extract the most performance, but the results are startling when you look at that. So, you kind of have to take it for what it is. That's why I'm a swing trader, not a day trader. I do day trade. You'll see when I bring up my trades, but the swing trading is far and away when I'm doing more because that's where you make more money. It just is what it is. Unless you're a super day trader. But of course, there's more than one way to make money in this market. I just try to go where there's more opportunity. All right. So that's the performance, and if we look at the breadth for the day too. You could see strong, right? This has been an issue the last couple days where we've had weaker breadth. That was not the case today. The Dow, 28 advancing names, 2 declining names. S&P, 376 advancing names, declining names, 127. NASDAQ, over 2,000 advancing names. So, again, this is pretty good. I've been kind of complaining about this the last couple days and wondering if it's been a warning signal. Perhaps maybe not, right? I mean, I still... whenever we've got multiple days of strength in the market, I try to be a net seller, right? I try to kind of add a little bit on the dips and names where we're kind of coming out of a dip. That's really where I try to put money to work. Not just when the market goes down, but when the market gives you a signal that it's starting to kind of come back up from a dip. That's really where I look, and look for moves out of consolidation. I talk a lot about the value area, value areas, obviously in my technicals, right? That's part of my trading edge, right? Is looking for names that are consolidating and then starting to break higher. That could either be just out of a lot of sideways consolidation, or that could be names that are in uptrends that have been resting a little bit and then going to take that next leg higher. That's the majority of my trading. Obviously, I do some other things too, but so I use the value areas, right? Volume at price, right, which is based on the market profile. I use that an awful lot in my trading. So hey, so we're out to new highs. I thought that this might be a sticky issue for the day, being that we were at top of value on the 1 hour chart, but we've managed to kind of just overcome it. So we'll see what we get. I think we could get anything. As I mentioned for the first 6 minutes of this video, Russell rebalance tomorrow. I don't make any predictions in any event, but especially for tomorrow, I think anything could happen for that. Qs, right? Out to new highs. And IW, I'm very close. IWC microcaps actually for the second day in a row. If we bring up my spreadsheet over here, you could see for the second day in a row they've led the microcaps, so the smallest companies. In terms of sector performance, the metals and mining were really strong today. I think that was on the back of the infrastructure stuff. The fact that they're pushing ahead with that gave these things a bounce. However, I looked at a bunch of names. We'll go through a couple of the names that I'm not convinced yet that these names are going to come right back. If we look at the metals and mining ETF, for example, coming into a little bit of resistance. I tried trading a little bit of Cliffs. I was a little bit late on this. CAT was a nice trade. Right, let's go back to Cliffs for a second. It's actually looking pretty good here, but I decided to take that trade off at the end of the day just because they were short-term calls, and I don't really like to hold a lot of short-term option positions. So that's Cleveland Cliffs. What's the other one that I was looking at? One of my favorites in the space is STLD. That's now inside value. Still has to get over the 20-day moving average. Alcoa right into the bottom of value resistance. So this is going to be a decision area, right? RS is another one, Reliance Steel and Aluminum, that's gotten pretty beaten up. So, I'm okay kind of missing the bottom in some of these names. I've talked about a couple of other ones. Deere. So Deere's made a real nice bounce from the lows. At this point, I would be saying I hope you're happy with the bounce. Now, the heavy lifting has to come. This was kind of got an oversold bounce, right? Huge amount of red candles in a row. Now has bounced, but you got some overhead stuff, specifically this bottom of value. So if you played some of the stuff for a bounce, congratulations. I don't really know. I don't really have any positions on in these things. I kind of want to wait and see. Maybe there's a multiple scenarios that can occur here. This can kind of come back and put in a higher low and then maybe bottom. That's kind of what I would be rooting for here. But we've seen V recoveries too. So, that's another scenario. So I don't really play that game of, I know a lot of people like to do that, right? Bring out the crystal ball stuff, right? Oh, let's draw a line in here and then we're going to go up, right? People love that stuff. I don't do that because it is what it is. I could draw a line. Oh, we're going to go straight up here too. Or we're going to go down and take this VPOC out and then we're going to go back up, right? I don't like to play those games with people in videos, but I know a lot of people, some people like to do that in their videos. But for now, I would just realize that there's some resistance at 358, and we'll see how price handles that, right? You're going to see, like I went through a couple names, like the STLD, you're going to see some names handle it a little bit better, right? That's where you're going to find your leaders come out, right? Just like we saw in growth for a couple months. One of the things that I said was, I thought growth to some extent could come back and we would see some things become leaders in the space and other things not come back as much, right? And that's really over the last week has happened, in terms of market leadership, right? We've seen a lot of names get back to new highs. So let's talk about a couple of those things for the day and for the rest of this video. So metals and mining was pretty big. Well, one of the underperforming groups has been the Chinese internet group. Well, I've talked about this now for a couple days. I thought that there was a possibility that we could see a double bottom happen here in the Chinese internet ETF. So far, that looks like that's what we have on our hands. There was also a nice, the other thing that I pointed out on Twitter was that there was a nice RSI divergence, right? This thing just barely, I think, made a new low, but the RSI did not, right? That's called a bullish RSI divergence. It usually means that that the low is in for now, right? And of course, I would watch this low, but we saw a pickup in option activity and a bunch of different, not only China names, but just emerging market names, right? So I went long some JD, right? This is a name that I've been watching for a while. I like that it made a little bit of a higher low. Again, it's been an underperformer, right? But I wouldn't be surprised, like, if this is the next group to catch some momentum to it. Baidu saw some calls. I mentioned Baba saw some calls yesterday. So I talked a little bit about this yesterday. Today, Jemias saw some calls. So you could use, like, again, being a disciplined trader is what we do here. You, instead of making market calls, I would say if you like this name, you could use basically like a $28 stop. OZON saw some calls today too. Right, that name is acting a little bit better. You got a virgin point of control where you could take a target coming up at 60, 70. PDD is another name too that has been catching some call activity. VIPs, a whole bunch of call activity today. Again, a really, really beaten up name, but somebody's thinking that the bottom is in here in VIPS, considering all the calls that that went up. Let me see. Let me give you the numbers for this for VIPS. There were puts. There was 207,000. Actually, there's a lot of puts that went up too, but it's 270,000. Oh, sorry, that's open interest. I always do that. Here it is. That looks better. So today's put call ratio, 123,000 calls traded today in VIPS. So again, to me, like a horrible looking chart, downtrend, but we talked about how things can bounce, right? And maybe this bounces up to 21. I saw a lot of 22 strike calls go up, cheapies, right? That went up for that name. So again, pretty interesting. Like I said, the Chinese internet name saw ETFs. I went long some JD.com. Again, I always give you what I'm doing rather than making up just talking hypothetically, which a lot of traders do on Twitter. They don't show you your P&L. So anyway, a little bit what I did for the day. I think I covered a couple subjects here. Let me just go over a couple other charts. Biotech came back strong today. Kind of went to sleep a little bit here for a week, but it was very strong today. It was one of the outperformers, up 2.2% for the session. Oil and gas was strong again today. XOP was up 1.6%. Even though it was a little bit weak at the end of the day, steel names were strong. We mentioned that one already. But again, you had good participation. The semis did okay today too, which is nice to see, up 1.6%. A couple standout players in this group. MRVL made new highs today, right? I know Nvidia gets all the attention, but Marvell has been just as good, well, almost just as good, I would say. But since they had earnings, they've been very stellar, right? I traded a little bit of AMD. I actually took it off at the end of the day, but nice little move in AMD today. That was one of the names that was on my list today, and just go through the rest of the performers for the day. Clean energy took a little bit of a break today. Down, up for the day, but sold off through the session. Value and growth were up about the same today. Those particular ETFs, and then the ARK ETFs outperformed again, right? So Tesla had a big gap up today, big move today. I think this thing, as we went over in yesterday's video, can get up to about 700. Right, 703 would be the next VPOC down here. So this is an interesting spot, right? If you missed this move in Tesla, because it happened quick, it always happens quick. But you got a little bit of a check back in here to about 680. You can maybe play for a $20 move, and then maybe leave the rest on. That's a lot of times how I look to trade things, other than not for my TTG Trend Portfolio, which again, kind of revamped that a little bit and been spending a bit more time doing that. Great for part-time traders, by the way. If you're a part-time trader, the TTG Trend Portfolio holds 30 names, and we've been making some substitutions, in terms of names that have been showing some momentum. Another name, I didn't catch this name today, but TTD, huge move today. A couple of traders caught this thing in the room today. Congratulations, but huge move back above the 200-day moving average. The news was something with Google, like what Google renewed their contract or something like that. I don't even know what the news was on it, but man, what huge momentum in this thing. And like I said, a couple of traders in the room caught this really nice. Where was the news? Yeah. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of headlines in here, but so that was one of the big movers today. Let me go over some of my trades. MGM, this was a trade that I've been holding on to for a bit. I got out of this trade today. Hit 45.34. Again, this was kind of a little bit of a struggler. I was looking for this thing to kind of come out of consolidation here and go to highs. Came back in, tested the top of value. I added to it once, so I got this trade to work. Not a huge gainer, but glad to see it work. Square, that was a name that you heard me talk about a couple, I think 2 days ago was when I put that trade on in Square. I took that trade off. It got close enough to that upward target VPOC. So nice gains in this one. Right, here's my final exit. Almost a double on this thing, right, for call spreads. Call spreads, again, I've been using these a bit more, for some of these momentum plays where the options are not expensive. They're a high price stock. I've been using call spreads, like $10 call spread. I get in for usually, around a little, somewhere around $3. And I look to kind of make a double or sometimes more, depending on what the time frame is left in the name. CRISPR took my second target in this one. Love this this weekly chart. You've probably heard me talk about this name a couple times. I've been stalking this trade for a while. If you look at the weekly chart in this thing, I think the weekly chart looks wonderful. It's really, talking about using the value areas for support. Look at how this thing kind of behaved. So again, as I said in the beginning of the video, a lot of what I try to do is wait for a name, not just to buy it on the dip, but wait for the name to start acting a little bit better. Right? I never try to time the bottom, right? Most trend traders, that's not their game, right? Once a name starts to act better is when I start to attack and look for opportunities in the name. So to hit my second target there, I tried Fastly today. That was a name that we saw call buying in last week, and it triggered for me right around the open. It didn't do much thereafter, so I bailed on the trade. I've been doing that a lot, like kind of renting names for a little bit, right? You kind of get into a name, you take a target or two, and then you see how it acts the rest of the day. If it doesn't act wonderfully, I take it off, right? I did that with AMD today too. Another name that hit another target today is INMD. I have one more target to go in this one. Maybe I split that last target into two. Acting very well here, made a new high. Costco, right? I mean, this was, by the way, perfect example of getting a name out of consolidation. So I took another target in Costco today, right around the high of the day, and we'll see what this does. I wouldn't mind even if this, like reloading on this name, if it kind of comes back and checks back a little bit and then does one of these, right? Again, I'm not going to draw that scenario out for you, but I wouldn't mind if this thing comes back and checks back in to this breakout level. That would be the place for me to add to it, right? That's a name that I've had high conviction in over the years. SE, another Asian name made a new high today. I thought this thing would hit 300 today, but almost. So still holding the trend. I'm long. I hit one target in it. That's a name that I continuously, you'll see me go in and out of that one. The other thing is like a couple other names, like I bailed on a few names today because, again, recognize that the market has been strong, and I want to make sure that I'm reducing risk into that, right? I've talked about that for for a couple days now. With the market being as strong as it is, you have to realize, as a trader, that you're not going to get even though the market's going up, you're not going to get every trade perfect, right? Not everyone is going to be a perfect winner because of timing. Maybe you chased a name here or there. So, when we have these really strong days, I like to just kind of clean up the book a little bit. So, make it nice and tidy, kind of go from there. ST, so that's kind of what I did today. It's a great, when you have strength in the market like this, it's great to kind of, much easier to get out of some names that haven't worked for you. When you've got like a big day. So it's wonderful to be getting out of some risk when the market's going up versus when you're in a bad spot in the other situation. STNG hit my first target in this one. This is we know that the CEO has been buying options in this one. I put this one on Twitter a couple nights ago. Starting to work pretty nicely for me. Also KKR. Out to new highs today. Took another target in this one. New name for me. I put Schwab on. I like the trend in this one. I've been trying to buy dips in this one. So Schwab, I put on a trade in this space. I don't know if they're affected by those stress tests. The stress tests, they were widely expected to be positive. So they were positive. So usually when everybody's expecting something, you don't get that much of a move. You get a big move when people are not expecting something and it happens. All right, so that's the end of today's recap. And guys, thanks for watching. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.